I stood in the break room on my last day at Vetoed Technologies, watching Linda Hartwell wave her manicured hand dismissively in my direction. The founder's daughter and VP of operations didn't even look up from her phone. "Grab my coffee," she said, like I was still her assistant, instead of the compliance officer who'd spent 3 years building this company's protocols. I reached into my bag, pulled out the small USB compliance dongle, and slid it across the marble countertop. Linda glanced at the label. HIPAA violation evidence. Federal audit trail. Her face drained of color. She grabbed my wrist hard. "Tell me that's a joke." Linda's fingers dug into my wrists like claws. I pulled away and took a step back, my heart hammering against my ribs. For a second, neither of us spoke. The break room suddenly felt too small, too quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine in the corner. "It's not a joke," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands wanted to shake. "That dongle contains 6 months of documentation. Every email, every financial transfer, every timestamp of unauthorized access to protected health information, everything you've been doing." Linda released my wrist and straightened up, her shock morphing into something harder, more calculated. She was only 32, but she'd learned early how to weaponize her last name. "What exactly do you think I've been doing, Madeline?" "Selling patient data," I said flatly. "Our healthcare clients trust us with sensitive medical records. You've been bypassing encryption protocols and sharing protected health information with third-party marketing firms. I have proof of 12 separate transactions over the past year alone. The company holds a $12 million contract with the Department of Health and Human Services. What you're doing is a federal crime." I'd worked at Vetoed Technologies for 3 years. I started as a junior compliance analyst and worked my way up to compliance officer, building the data security protocols from scratch. 9 months ago, I noticed irregularities in our server access logs. Files being moved outside, normal business hours, encrypted data being decrypted without proper authorization codes. At first, I thought it was a security breach from an outside source. Then, I traced the access credentials. They belonged to Linda. I spent 6 months documenting everything. I created spreadsheets tracking every violation. I saved email chains where Linda discussed alternative revenue streams with contacts at marketing companies. I found wire transfer receipts showing payments from these firms to offshore accounts. I logged every instance of patient data leaving our secure servers. I built an airtight case, copying everything to multiple backups because I knew what I was up against. Linda walked to the break room door and closed it. When she turned back to me, her expression had shifted entirely. The panic was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said quietly. "Do you know who my father is? Gerald Hartwell didn't build this company from nothing just to have some compliance clerk destroy it over a technicality." "A technicality?" I felt anger rising in my chest. "We're talking about real people's medical records, cancer diagnoses, mental health histories, addiction treatment. And you sold that information so pharmaceutical companies could target vulnerable patients with predatory marketing." "That's business," Linda said, shrugging. "That data was going to waste. We monetized an asset. Every company does it." "Not every company has federal healthcare contracts," I shot back. "Not every company is bound by HIPAA regulations. What you've done could send you to prison." Linda pulled out her phone. "Here's what's going to happen instead. That evidence disappears. You forget you ever saw anything. And maybe, just maybe, I'll be generous enough to let you keep your severance package." My severance, 3 months' salary, $22,000. I'd submitted my resignation 2 weeks ago after being passed over for a senior position in favor of Linda's college roommate, someone with half my experience and none of my qualifications. That severance money was supposed to carry me through until I found a new job. I had exactly $1,100 in savings. My rent was $1,500 a month. My 7-year-old daughter Emma and I lived paycheck to paycheck, especially since my ex-husband Todd had stopped paying child support 8 months ago when he moved to Texas. But this wasn't about the money. Not really. The evidence is already submitted, I lied. I sent everything to the Office for Civil Rights at HHS this morning. They'll be starting their investigation next week. Linda's face hardened. She tapped her phone screen a few times, then held it to her ear. I need security in the executive break room. Now. My stomach dropped. 2 security guards arrived within 90 seconds. Linda's voice took on a different tone, louder, performative. This woman has stolen proprietary company data and is attempting corporate espionage. I need her escorted to her desk to collect her personal belongings under supervision, then removed from the premises. That's not what's happening here, I said urgently to the guards. I'm a whistleblower. She's covering up federal crimes. She's having a mental breakdown, Linda said smoothly to the guards. It's very sad. We've been concerned about her stability for weeks. The guards looked uncomfortable, but they had their orders. One of them, an older man named Patrick, who I'd chatted with dozens of times, wouldn't meet my eyes. Ma'am, please come with us. They walked me to my desk. My coworkers stared as I passed. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away. Linda followed us, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floors. When we reached my cubicle, she stood close enough that the guards couldn't hear her speak. Your severance is now being withheld pending an investigation into data theft, she said softly. That's $22,000 you'll never see. And Madeline? I know where you live. I know Emma goes to Riverside Elementary. I know she has art class on Tuesdays and stays late for chess club on Thursdays. I know you're barely keeping it together financially. One word from me, and your whole life gets so much worse. My hands were shaking as I packed my few personal items into a cardboard box. A framed photo of Emma. My coffee mug. A succulent plant that was half dead anyway. Linda was threatening my daughter. Not explicitly, but the message was clear. You have 48 hours, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 48 hours to resign and implement proper compliance protocols. After that, I'm going to every regulatory agency that will listen. Linda smiled. That's very wise. Taking some time to think. I'm sure you'll make the right choice. I walked out of Data Vault Technologies carrying my pathetic little box of belongings. The afternoon sun was too bright. My car was too hot. I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to stop shaking. The compliance dongle was still in my pocket. I hadn't actually sent anything to HHS yet. I'd planned to do it today, after this confrontation, once I was safely out of the building. But now Linda knew. Now I'd shown my hand, and she'd threatened Emma. I started the car and drove to pick up my daughter from after-school care. My mind racing with terrible possibilities. Emma bounced out of the after-school program at 5:30, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She was talking before she even reached the car, something about a butterfly they'd seen on the playground, and how her friend Sydney said it was a monarch, but Emma thought it was a painted lady. Can we look it up when we get home? She asked, buckling herself into the back seat. Of course, baby, I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. We drove home to our 2-bedroom apartment in San Jose. It was a 15-minute drive through rush hour traffic. Emma chattered the whole way about her day, about the upcoming field trip to the Science Museum, about how her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, said she was doing really well in math. I made the appropriate sounds of interest and encouragement while my mind spun in circles. At home, I made spaghetti for dinner because it was Emma's favorite, and I needed something familiar and comforting. We ate together at our small kitchen table. Emma told me a joke she'd learned. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. I laughed because she was giggling so hard she could barely get the punchline out. After dinner, we looked up butterflies on my laptop. It was a painted lady. Emma was delighted to be right. We did her homework together, 3rd-grade math problems about multiplication. She was getting good at her times tables. By 8:30, she was in her pajamas, teeth brushed, and I was reading her a chapter from the book we'd been working through, a story about a girl who discovers a magical library. Love you, Mama, Emma said sleepily when I kissed her forehead and turned out the light. Love you more, I whispered back. Then I sat alone at my kitchen table and stared at the compliance dongle. I had 3 copies of the evidence. The original dongle in my purse, a cloud backup on a secure server I'd set up specifically for this purpose, and a folder of printed documents in my filing cabinet. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to the Office for Civil Rights. I wrote out everything I knew, attaching links to the cloud backup. I explained who I was, what I'd discovered, what I'd documented. My finger hovered over the send button. At 10:45, I heard a sound at my front door. A scraping, clicking noise. Then the door swung open. My heart stopped. I jumped up from the table. Someone was in my apartment. Multiple someones. Heavy footsteps. I could see shadows moving in the living room. I ran to Emma's bedroom, scooped her out of bed. She woke up confused and frightened. I carried her to my bathroom, locked the door, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I called 911. Someone broke into my apartment. I whispered frantically into the phone. I'm locked in the bathroom with my daughter. Please send someone. The dispatcher kept me on the line. I could hear the intruders going through my things. Drawers being yanked open, furniture scraping across the floor, the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Emma was crying silently against my shoulder, her small body trembling. It's okay, baby, I whispered. The police are coming. We're safe. We're safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt terrified. The police arrived in 6 minutes, though it felt like 6 hours. I heard shouting, then silence, then a knock on the bathroom door. Ma'am, this is Officer Chen from San Jose PD. You can come out now. They're gone. I opened the door slowly, holding Emma tight. 2 police officers stood in my apartment. A man and a woman. They looked grim. My apartment was destroyed. Every drawer had been pulled out and dumped. The couch cushions were slashed open, stuffing spilling out. My bookshelf was knocked over. Kitchen cabinets stood open. Contents scattered across the floor. My laptop was smashed on the ground. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. Did you get a look at them? The male officer asked. No. I grabbed my daughter and locked us in the bathroom. Any idea what they were looking for? I hesitated. How could I explain this? Maybe. The female officer walked around the apartment, taking photos. The interesting thing is, there's no forced entry on your front door lock. Someone used a key. That's impossible, I said. I have the only keys. We'll need to talk to your landlord, she said. Someone had access. They took my statement. They gave me a case number. They said they'd investigate, but honestly, residential burglaries were hard to solve. They asked if I had somewhere else to stay tonight. I said I'd figure it out. After they left, I walked through the wreckage of my home. My filing cabinet had been pried open. The folder of printed documents was gone. My laptop was destroyed. But I still had my purse with the dongle. And I still had my phone with access to the cloud backup. Except when I tried to log in, the account didn't exist anymore. Deleted. Gone. All my evidence vanished. I felt sick. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Mama, I'm scared. Are the bad people coming back? No, sweetheart, I said, though I had no idea if that was true. We're going to stay with Aunt Jessica tonight, okay? Let's pack a bag. I called my friend Jessica, who lived 20 minutes away in Sunnyvale. She answered on the second ring. Maddie? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? Someone broke into my apartment. Emma and I need somewhere to stay. Please. Oh my God. Yes, of course. Come right now. I threw clothes into a duffel bag. Toothbrushes. Emma's stuffed rabbit. My purse. We left the destroyed apartment behind and drove through the dark streets to Jessica's house. Jessica met us at the door, her face full of concern. She was my closest friend, someone I'd known since college. She got Emma settled in the guest room with extra blankets and her own daughter's old nightlight. Then she sat with me in her living room while I told her everything. You need to go to the police, Jessica said. The FBI. Someone. I know, I said. Tomorrow. I'll figure it out tomorrow. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with an email from an unknown sender. My hands went cold when I opened it. The email contained photos of Emma at school that very day. Different angles, different times. One showed her on the playground at recess. Another showed her walking into the building after lunch. Another showed her getting on the bus at the end of the day. Someone had been following my daughter. The message with the photos said, "Drop this or next time we take more than papers." I couldn't breathe. Jessica looked at the photos and went pale. "Maddie, this is serious. This is organized. They're watching you." I knew. Linda's father had resources I hadn't fully understood. This wasn't just corporate intimidation. This was systematic, professional, and terrifying. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in Jessica's guest room with Emma curled against me, and I stared at the ceiling, and I tried to figure out what to do. They'd destroyed my evidence. They'd violated my home. They'd photographed my child. And I was supposed to just back down? Let them win? Let them keep selling people's medical records for profit? But if I fought back, what would they do to Emma? By the time the sun came up, I still didn't have an answer. The next morning, Jessica drove us to Emma's school. We walked her in together, both of us watching every person we passed. I spoke to the principal, explained there was a custody situation, said no one except me or Jessica was authorized to pick Emma up. The principal made a note, but she looked skeptical. I wanted to tell her everything, but how could I explain that my daughter was being stalked because I'd discovered federal crimes? After dropping Emma off, I made a decision. I drove to the FBI field office in San Francisco. If anyone could protect us and actually do something about Data Vault, it would be federal agents. I arrived at 9:30 and asked to speak with someone about corporate fraud and HIPAA violations. The receptionist made me wait. I sat in a hard plastic chair for over an hour, watching other people come and go, my anxiety climbing with each passing minute. Finally, a woman in a gray suit called my name. "I'm Agent Sarah Brennan, White Collar Crime Division. Come with me." We went to a small interview room. I told her everything. The data breaches, Linda's scheme, the threats, the break-in, the photos of Emma. I spoke quickly, urgently, trying to make her understand how serious this was. Agent Brennan listened carefully, taking notes. Her expression was professional, neutral. When I finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "Miss Hayes, I need to show you something." She turned her computer screen toward me. Data Vault Technologies filed a complaint with this office yesterday evening at 6 p.m. They're accusing you of stealing classified government data, corporate espionage, and attempting to sell proprietary information to foreign competitors. The room tilted. What? They provided substantial evidence, emails from your work account to an address registered in China discussing payment for data. Financial records showing a wire transfer of $5,000 into your bank account from an offshore source 3 days ago. Digital forensic logs showing you accessed secure servers outside business hours and downloaded protected files to an external drive. "That's insane," I said. "I never did any of that. It's fabricated. They're framing me." Agent Brennan's expression didn't change. "Do you have a personal bank account I can access with your permission?" "Yes, of course." My hand shook as I logged into my bank app and showed her. She looked at the screen, then she looked at me. "There's a deposit here from 3 days ago. $5,000. Source listed as international consulting fee." I stared at my phone. The deposit was real. $5,000. I'd never seen before. Never knew existed. Sitting in my checking account. "I have no idea where that came from," I stammered. "Someone must have hacked my account. Planted this. It's part of the frame-up." "Miss Hayes, do you have the evidence you mentioned? The documentation of their violations?" I pulled out the compliance dongle with shaking hands. Agent Brennan took it, plugged it into a secure computer. We both watched the screen. The dongle showed up as connected, But when she opened the drive, it was empty, corrupted, no files. No, I whispered. No, 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 there were files. Thousands of files. I frantically opened my phone, tried to access the cloud backup. The account was gone, completely deleted. All my evidence is gone, I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. But I'm telling you the truth. Data Vault is violating federal healthcare regulations. Linda Hartwell is selling patient data. I documented everything. Agent Brennan closed her laptop. Miss Hayes, I think you should get a lawyer. The evidence Data Vault provided is substantial. While we investigate their claims, you're now under scrutiny as well. I'm advising you not to leave the state. They're lying, I said desperately. Can't you see what they're doing? They have resources. They're covering their tracks. They're destroying my credibility so no one will believe me. That may be true, Agent Brennan said quietly. But right now, I have to follow the evidence. And the evidence points to you as the problem, not them. I walked out of the FBI building in a daze. I sat in my car in the parking garage and stared at nothing. They'd beaten me. They'd destroyed my evidence, planted false evidence against me, and turned the FBI investigation around to target me instead of them. My phone rang. My landlord. My rent was late. When was I paying? I checked my bank account again. $87. Plus that mysterious $5,000 that I was terrified to touch because it was probably part of the frame. I drove back to my violated apartment because I had nowhere else to go. When I got home, there were 3 new emails waiting. The first was from LinkedIn. My professional account had been suspended for fraudulent activity. The second was from the recruiting firm I'd been working with to find a new job. They were terminating our relationship due to ethical concerns that had come to their attention. The third was from Data Vault's legal team. I was being sued for $2 million in damages for theft of trade secrets. I sat on my slashed couch and read that email 3 times. $2 million. I barely had $2,000. They were going to financially destroy me. I called my mom in Ohio. She was 70, living on Social Security. She couldn't help. My dad had died 3 years ago. My brother was deployed with the Navy somewhere in the Pacific. I had no family who could support me. Jessica was supportive, but I could hear the fear in her voice when we talked. She had her own family to protect. Emma needed new shoes. The field trip fee was due Friday, $50. I had no job, no income, no prospects. Every company I applied to would see the lawsuit, the FBI inquiry, the suspended LinkedIn account. I sat there alone and cried harder than I'd cried in years. Everything was falling apart. My phone rang. Unknown number? I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Madeline, this is Gerald Hartwell, Linda's father, the founder of Data Vault. His voice was warm, grandfatherly, concerned. I want you to know that I'm aware of what's happened. Linda told me about your confrontation. I've reviewed the situation, and I think this has all gotten terribly out of hand. You're a good person, a good mother, and you were just trying to do your job. I respect that. I said nothing. I'd like to make this right, Gerald continued. We're prepared to offer you a settlement, $100,000. We'll drop the lawsuit. We'll retract the FBI complaint. This all goes away. You sign an NDA, we call it a misunderstanding, and you can move on with your life. Use that money to start fresh somewhere new. $100,000. More money than I'd ever had at once. Enough to move to support Emma to survive this nightmare. All you have to do, Gerald said gently, is sign some paperwork. Admit there was a misunderstanding about data access. Sign the NDA. This ends today. I know this must be incredibly hard for you as a mother. Emma shouldn't suffer because of a workplace dispute. He said my daughter's name. A reminder. They knew where she was, what she did, who she was. I'll give you 48 hours to think about it, Gerald said. But Madeline, I strongly encourage you to take this offer. It's generous. It's fair. and it's the only way this ends well for everyone involved." He hung up. I sat, holding my phone, and understood exactly what had happened. They'd spent 36 hours systematically destroying my life so that this offer would be irresistible. They'd made me desperate so I'd take their money and disappear. $100,000 to cover up federal crimes. To admit to espionage I didn't commit. To let them keep selling people's private medical information for profit. I had 48 hours to decide whether to save myself or keep fighting a battle I was losing badly. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay in my bed in my destroyed apartment and stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what to do. Emma slept beside me because she was too scared to sleep in her own room. Every small noise made my heart race. $100,000. I kept coming back to that number. It would solve everything. We could move to another state, start over. I could find a normal job, something far away from tech and compliance and corporate fraud. Emma would be safe, but I'd be admitting to crimes I didn't commit, and I'd be letting Linda and Gerald continue destroying lives. The next day, I thought about my final backup. 6 weeks ago, knowing how dangerous this could get, I'd mailed a copy of some key documents to myself via certified mail. The plan was to keep the sealed envelope with the postmark as proof of the date. If anyone questioned my timeline, I'd have that verification. I checked my mailbox. Nothing. I drove to the post office and asked about the package. The clerk checked the tracking number, delivered 4 days ago, signed for at my address. But I never got it, I said. The clerk showed me the signature. It wasn't mine. Someone else had signed my name. I drove back to my apartment and confronted my landlord, Mr. Kowalski. He lived in the unit below mine. He was in his 60s, a retired plumber who owned the building. "Did someone come to my apartment recently?" I demanded. "Someone who wasn't me?" He looked uncomfortable. "Well, there was a company that came by last week, said they were from a property management firm, needed to inspect the apartment for a refinancing thing. They had paperwork and everything. I gave them a key." "You gave strangers a key to my apartment?" "They weren't strangers, they were from a company. Look, here's the card they left." He handed me a business card. Pacific Property Services, with a logo and phone number. I called the number. Disconnected. "They conned you," I said. "They weren't from any property company. They broke into my apartment, they stole my mail, they've been setting me up." Mr. Kowalski went pale. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. They seemed so professional." "It's too late now," I said bitterly. He hesitated. "Look, I hate to add to your problems, but your rent is 5 days late, and with everything going on, I'm getting nervous. I need you to pay up, or I'm going to have to start eviction proceedings." "You're evicting me?" "Not yet. But I need the rent. And honestly, Madeline, maybe it's better if you find somewhere else. I don't want to be involved in whatever this is." I went back upstairs and looked at apartments online. Even the cheapest studios were $1,200 a month, requiring first and last month plus a security deposit. I'd need $3,600 just to move. I had $87. I applied to 15 jobs that day. Retail, food service, anything. Every single one rejected me within hours. They were running background checks and finding the lawsuit, the FBI inquiry, the cloud of suspicion following me everywhere. My phone rang. Gerald Hartwell again. 24 hours left, Madeline. I've reconsidered my offer. $75,000. Take it or leave it. He'd lowered the price because he knew I was drowning. "Emma's school tuition is due next month," he said. "How are you planning to pay for that?" "Emma went to public school." He was lying, but the threat was clear. They were watching every detail of our lives. I hung up on him. Jessica called an hour later. Her voice was strained. "Maddie, I need to talk to you." "What's wrong?" "Someone left a note on our car this morning. It said, 'Tell your friend to make smart choices. My husband is really worried. He's scared about our kids getting involved in this somehow.'" "Jessica, I'm so sorry. I know you didn't do anything wrong. But I have to think about my family. You and Emma can stay through tomorrow night, but then you need to find somewhere else. I'm sorry. I feel terrible, but I have to protect my kids. I understand, I said, even though I felt utterly abandoned. That night, I sat in Jessica's guest room and watched Emma sleep. I thought about taking the $75,000. We could move to Oregon or Colorado, somewhere far away. I could change fields entirely. Forget tech, forget compliance, forget everything. Just be a mom working a regular job in a new town where nobody knew us. But then, I thought about all those people whose medical records Linda had sold. Cancer patients getting targeted by predatory supplement companies, people in addiction recovery being marketed alcohol, mental health patients having their diagnoses sold to data brokers. Real people, real lives, being exploited for profit. And I thought about my dad. He'd been a union organizer, spent his whole life fighting for workers who had no power. He died at 62 of a heart attack, worn down by the constant battles. But he never gave up. He always said the hardest thing in the world was to stand up when you're already knocked down. That's when it counts most. At 2 a.m, I remembered something. 9 months ago, I'd gone to a conference on healthcare data security in San Diego. I'd met a journalist there, Natalie Ross. She wrote for a major tech publication, specialized in exposing corporate fraud in Silicon Valley. We'd talked for almost an hour about data protection and HIPAA compliance. We'd exchanged business cards. I searched through my old emails and found her contact information. I wrote her an email. I had no evidence left, but I had my testimony. I explained everything. What I'd discovered, what happened, the threats, the break-in, the frame-up, the settlement offer. I told her about the patients whose data was being sold, about Linda and Gerald, about the systematic cover-up. I asked if she'd be interested in investigating. I hit send and immediately regretted it. What if she didn't believe me? What if she was working with them? What if this made everything worse? At 8 a.m, Natalie responded. She was very interested. She'd actually been tracking DataVault for 6 months on a different story about questionable government contracts. She suspected something wasn't right, but hadn't been able to prove anything. My testimony might be the missing piece. She asked if I'd go on record, if I'd meet with her. I thought about Gerald's deadline. 16 hours left. I agreed to meet. We met at a coffee shop in Palo Alto at noon. Natalie was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, carrying a leather messenger bag full of notebooks and recording equipment. She ordered us both coffee, and we sat in a corner booth. I told her everything. She recorded our conversation with my permission. She took notes. She asked clarifying questions. She was professional, thorough, and she believed me. This sounds credible, she said. But without hard evidence, it's difficult to publish. It becomes he said, she said. However, I've been investigating DataVault for months. I suspected financial irregularities in their government contracts. Your testimony corroborates what I've been seeing. If I can find other sources, other former employees, we might have a story. How long would that take? A few weeks, maybe a month? I didn't have a month. I had 16 hours until Gerald's deadline expired. My phone rang while we were sitting there. Emma's school. My heart stopped. Miss Hayes, this is Principal Davidson at Riverside Elementary. I'm calling because Emma didn't show up to her afternoon class. She was here for morning attendance, but she's missing from the roster after lunch. We've checked the building and we can't find her. The coffee shop disappeared. The world disappeared. There was only the voice on the phone and the terror flooding my body. What do you mean she's missing? We're conducting a full search now. We've called the police. Do you know if someone might have picked her up? No. No one was supposed to pick her up. No one except me. I was already running for my car. Natalie followed me, asking what happened. I told her, and her face went white. A text message came through from an unknown number. The offer expires in 1 hour. Sign the papers, or you won't see Emma again. They'd taken my daughter. I screamed. Actually screamed in the parking lot. Natalie grabbed my shoulders. "We're calling the police right now," she said. "They said to come alone," I sobbed. "They said to sign the papers." Another text. A DocuSign link. The NDA and settlement agreement. And a location. A parking garage on 3rd Street in downtown San Jose. "Come alone in 30 minutes. Sign the papers. Get Emma back." "You can't go alone," Natalie said. "This is a kidnapping. This is federal crime. We're calling the FBI. If I bring anyone, they'll hurt her." I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. "I have to go. I have to sign. I don't care anymore. I just want my daughter back." Natalie looked torn. "At least let me follow you at a distance. Please. I'll stay hidden, but I'll be nearby if you need help." I didn't have time to argue. I got in my car and drove toward downtown San Jose, breaking every speed limit, running yellow lights, my entire body vibrating with fear. They'd taken Emma. They'd kidnapped my child. These people were capable of anything. The parking garage was a concrete structure in the middle of downtown San Jose, the kind used by office workers and shoppers. I parked on level 3 as instructed. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Most of the spaces were full, but I didn't see any people. A black SUV with tinted windows sat in the far corner. I walked toward it on legs that barely held me up. My phone was in my hand, the DocuSign link pulled up, my thumb hovering over the signature field. The SUV's back door opened. Linda stepped out. Not Gerald, Linda. She was wearing a charcoal suit and heels. Carrying a tablet like this was a business meeting. Her face showed no emotion. "Where is she?" I demanded. My voice came out ragged, barely controlled. "Emma is safe," Linda said calmly. "She's nearby. Sign the papers first, then you get her back." "I want to see her first. I need to know she's okay." "That's not how this works, Madeline. You sign, then you see your daughter. Those are the terms." I felt something break inside me. All the fear turned to rage. Pure, incandescent rage. "You kidnapped a child," I said, my voice shaking. "A 7-year-old girl. Do you understand what you've done? This isn't business. This isn't a contract dispute. This is a felony. You're going to prison." Linda's expression didn't change. "I haven't done anything. Someone picked up your daughter from school claiming to be your coworker. That person will be impossible to identify or find. There's no evidence connecting her to me or my father. You, on the other hand, have a documented history of instability. Failed career, financial desperation, allegations of espionage. If something happened to Emma, investigators would look at you first. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They'd planned this perfectly. No traces back to them. "Where is my daughter?" I asked again, and I was crying now, hot tears running down my face. "Sign the document." I looked at the tablet she held out. The settlement agreement, the NDA, the admission that I'd committed corporate espionage and mishandled data. All lies. But what choice did I have? With shaking hands, I took the tablet. I read through the document, my vision blurring with tears. I was admitting to federal crimes, agreeing never to speak about Data Vault, accepting $75,000 in exchange for my silence and my reputation. I signed it. I drew my name with my finger on the screen and felt a piece of myself die. "Good," Linda said, taking the tablet back. She made a phone call. "Send her over." 2 minutes later, another car pulled up. Emma jumped out, running toward me. I fell to my knees and caught her. Holding her so tight, she squeaked, "Mama, what's happening?" I was so scared. "I know, baby. I know. It's over now. We're okay." The car that had brought her drove away immediately. I saw the driver was a woman I didn't recognize. She'd be impossible to trace, just like Linda said. Linda walked back to her SUV. Before she got in, she turned to me one last time. "The money will be in your account by tomorrow morning. Use it to move far away from here. If you ever break that NDA, the penalty is $5 million. Plus, you've now signed a legal document admitting to federal crimes. We have your confession. You're trapped, Madeline, but your daughter is safe. Be grateful for that." The SUV drove away. I sat on the concrete floor of the parking garage holding Emma, both of us crying. A woman walking to her car stopped and asked if we needed help. I said we were fine, just a bad day. She looked doubtful but kept walking. Eventually, I got Emma into my car. I drove us back to Jessica's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. Emma asked what happened, why that woman took her from school, why she had to get ice cream with strangers and drive around for hours. I tried to explain in terms a 7-year-old could understand. Some people were being mean to mommy at work, but it's over now. The mean people are gone. We're safe. Promise? Emma asked in a small voice. Promise, I lied. That evening, after Emma finally fell asleep, exhausted from fear and confusion, I sat with Jessica and told her what happened. She was horrified. You have to go to the police. They kidnapped Emma. That's serious. With what evidence? There's no proof. Linda was careful. And I signed the settlement. If I try to report them now, they'll say I'm violating the NDA. They'll sue me for $5 million. And I admitted to espionage in that document. They can use it against me. Jessica looked helpless. So they just win? They terrorize you and steal your daughter and walk away? Yes, I said bitterly. That's exactly what happens. My phone rang. Natalie. I'd forgotten she was supposed to be following at a distance. Are you okay? Is Emma okay? I lost you in traffic. We're fine. It's over. Did you sign? Yes. There was a long pause. Madeline, I've been doing some investigating while this was happening. I found something important. 2 other former Data Vault employees contacted me in the past year with similar stories. Both discovered problems at the company. Both were pressured into signing NDAs and taking settlements. Both disappeared from the industry. I felt a chill. I'm not the first. No. This is a pattern. They've done this before. Linda and Gerald have a system for silencing whistleblowers. But here's the thing. One of those former employees, a woman named Jennifer Kwan, kept a secret backup of evidence. She's been sitting on it for 2 years, too scared to use it, but she's watching my investigation. She's willing to share what she has if other people come forward. There's a chance to build a real case, but it requires breaking your NDA. I can't, I said. I just got Emma back. I can't risk losing her again. I understand, Natalie said. But think about it. They're going to keep doing this to other people. You could stop them. After she hung up, I sat in Jessica's living room and felt utterly hollowed out. I'd fought and lost. Emma was safe, but at the cost of everything else. The $75,000 would arrive tomorrow. I should feel relieved. Instead, I felt complicit in something evil. At 11 p.m., I got an email from Agent Sarah Brennan at the FBI. The investigation into me had been closed. Data Vault had withdrawn their complaint. The case was over. But there was a note in my file about suspected espionage. Not a conviction, but a permanent mark. I'd never pass a security clearance again. Whole categories of jobs were now impossible. I'd lost my career, my reputation, my apartment, my savings, my dignity. Yes, I had $75,000 coming, and my daughter was safe. But at what cost? I sat alone in the dark and wondered if I should have just gotten Linda her coffee on that last day. If I should have stayed quiet and kept my head down, maybe then none of this would have happened. Maybe silence was safer. I woke up the next morning and checked my bank account. $75,000 sat there, real and solid. It should have felt like salvation. Instead, it felt like a weight. Emma climbed into bed next to me. She'd had nightmares all night, waking up crying 3 times. I'd held her and promised over and over that no one would take her again. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" she asked. I hugged her close. "Yes, baby, we're going to be okay." While Emma ate cereal, I checked my email. There was a message from someone named Jennifer Kwan. The subject line said, I know what you're going through. I opened it. Jennifer explained that she'd been a senior developer at Data Vault 2 years ago. She'd discovered the company was violating terms of their government contracts, selling unauthorized access to federal agency data. When she tried to report it internally, she was threatened. Her apartment was vandalized. Her car was keyed. Anonymous messages told her to back off or face consequences. Eventually, she was offered $90,000 to sign an NDA and leave quietly. She took the money and moved to Seattle. She'd been silent for 2 years, terrified of the penalty clauses in her agreement, but she kept something Data Vault didn't know about. Before everything happened, she'd set up an automated backup system that copied server logs to an encrypted external location. Those logs showed everything: data breaches, financial transactions, Linda's involvement, Gerald's approval, time-stamped, authenticated, digital evidence that would hold up in court. She'd been sitting on this evidence for 2 years, afraid to use it. But Natalie's investigation had given her hope. If there were others willing to come forward, they might have enough to actually bring Data Vault down. I'm tired of being afraid, Jennifer's email said. I'm tired of knowing they're still doing this to other people. If you and the other former employee Natalie mentioned are willing to coordinate, I'll release my logs. We can do this together. But all 3 of us have to be willing to break our NDAs simultaneously and face the consequences as a group. She left her phone number. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I called her. Jennifer sounded like me. Exhausted, scared, but determined. We talked for over an hour. She told me her whole story. The similarities to mine were striking. The same tactics, the same threats, the same settlement offer designed to look generous while actually being hush money. I have 2 kids, Jennifer said. They're 9 and 11 now. For 2 years I've been looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows. But I've also been watching them grow up knowing their mom ran away from a fight. I don't want them to learn that lesson. But the risk, I said, the NDA penalties, the lawsuit threats, the possibility they'll come after us again. We do it legally this time, Jennifer said. There's something called the False Claims Act. It lets private citizens sue companies that defraud the government. If we can prove Data Vault violated their government contracts, we can recover damages on behalf of the federal government. And whistleblowers get 15 to 30% of whatever's recovered. How much are their contracts worth? Over $50 million in active federal contracts. If we win, the recovery could be massive. I thought about Emma, about safety, about the $75,000 that was supposed to buy us a fresh start somewhere far away. I need to think about it, I said. After we hung up, I took Emma to the park. She played on the swings while I sat on a bench and watched her. She was laughing, flying high, and for a moment she looked like a normal 7-year-old instead of a child who'd been kidnapped 2 days ago. I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be, what kind of example I wanted to set. My father had spent his life fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. He died young because the stress wore him down, but he died knowing he'd stood for something. That afternoon, I went to the library and researched whistleblower law. I found information about the False Claims Act, about legal protections for people who report fraud against the government. I learned about attorneys who specialized in these cases. I found a lawyer named Patricia Lloyd who had a strong track record with whistleblower cases. I called her office and explained my situation. She agreed to a free consultation. We met that evening at a coffee shop. Patricia was in her early 50s, confident and sharp. She listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. This is exactly the kind of case I handle. If Jennifer's server logs are legitimate, and you 3 are willing to testify, you have a viable False Claims Act case. I work on contingency, meaning I only get paid if we win. It costs you nothing up front. What are the risks? Patricia was honest. Data Vault will fight viciously. They'll try to enforce the NDA penalties, though I believe a court won't uphold an NDA that covers criminal activity. The legal battle could take 2 to 3 years. You'll need income to support yourself during that time. And based on what you've told me, they've shown they're willing to play dirty. What about protection? For me and my daughter? Once we file, everything becomes public record. That actually provides some protection because they can't threaten you quietly anymore. And if they retaliate after we file, it strengthens our case. But I won't lie to you, Madeline. This will be hard. You need to be absolutely sure before we start down this road. I thought about the $75,000. About running away to Oregon or Colorado, changing my name, starting over, about letting Linda and Gerald keep destroying lives. I need 24 hours to decide, I said. That night, lying in bed next to Emma, I thought about my father. He used to say that the hardest thing in the world is to stand up when you're already knocked down. That's when it counts most. That's when the fight actually matters. At 2 a.m, I made my decision. I emailed Jennifer, the other former employee Natalie had mentioned named Heather, and Patricia. I was in. I'd testify. I'd break the NDA. I'd fight. Over the next 48 hours, we built our case. Jennifer provided her server logs, 30,000 pages of digital evidence. Heather, who'd been a project manager at Data Vault 3 years ago, provided internal emails she'd saved, showing Gerald personally approving fraudulent billing practices. I provided my testimony, my timeline, my documentation of what I'd seen. Natalie prepared an investigative article to publish the moment we filed our lawsuit. Patricia drafted the False Claims Act complaint. I moved the $75,000 to a separate account. I wouldn't spend it. If Data Vault wanted their hush money back, they could have it. I found a job at Target, 20 hours a week at minimum wage. It wasn't much, but it was immediate income. I moved to a cheaper apartment in a less safe neighborhood. I told Emma we were having an adventure, starting fresh. Every day I was terrified. I checked over my shoulder constantly. I changed our routes. I made Emma promise to never leave with anyone except me, no matter what they said. But I wasn't alone anymore. Jennifer checked in daily. Heather sent encouraging texts. Patricia kept us updated on the legal strategy. Natalie was ready to expose everything. 3 days before we planned to file, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. A woman's voice I didn't recognize said her name was Carolyn Hartwell, Gerald's wife, Linda's mother. She'd been married to Gerald for 35 years. She knew what the company had been doing. She'd known for years. She was horrified by what Linda had become, by what they'd done to people like me. "I'm filing for divorce," Carolyn said, "and I want to help you." Gerald keeps documents in his home office. Financial records, board meeting minutes, strategy memos. I can provide them. I can testify. I want to burn it all down. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I'm ashamed," she said simply. "I stayed quiet too long. I let this happen. I need to make it right." Carolyn's documents showed Gerald personally authorized the data sales. He knew everything. He'd profited millions. With her testimony, our case became airtight. We set a filing date, Monday morning, 9 a.m. Natalie's exposé would publish simultaneously. We were going to hit Data Vault from every angle at once. I spent the weekend with Emma. I told her that Mommy had to do something hard that might make life bumpy for a while, but it was important to do the right thing even when it's scary. Like when I had to tell Mrs. Patterson that Sydney was being mean to the new girl, even though I was scared Sydney would be mad at me, Emma asked. Exactly like that, I said, hugging her. On Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, thinking about everything that could go wrong. But I also thought about all those patients whose medical data had been sold, about other employees who might discover fraud in the future, about whether I could live with myself if I walked away. Monday morning, I put on my best outfit and drove to Patricia's office. Jennifer and Heather were already there. Natalie arrived with her laptop. Carolyn showed up 10 minutes before we were scheduled to file, carrying a box of documents. At exactly 9 a.m., Patricia filed our False Claims Act complaint in federal court. Natalie hit publish on her exposé. The fight began. The story hit every major tech news site within 2 hours. Natalie's article was detailed, devastating, and backed by documents. Silicon Valley startup accused of selling patient data, silencing whistleblowers through intimidation and fraud. She'd interviewed all three of us. She'd reviewed Jennifer's server logs. She'd included Carolyn's testimony about Gerald's personal involvement. The article detailed the break-ins, the threats, the frame-up, the kidnapping, everything. Social media exploded. DataVault's stock, which had gone public 8 months earlier, dropped 47% by noon. Major clients issued statements suspending their contracts, pending investigation. The Department of Health and Human Services announced an immediate audit of DataVault's federal healthcare contracts. By end of business Monday, the FBI had reopened their investigation, this time targeting DataVault instead of me. DataVault's response was predictable. They issued a statement denying all allegations, calling our lawsuit a coordinated attack by disgruntled former employees seeking financial gain. Their lawyers filed motions to dismiss and threatened to enforce the NDA penalties against all three of us. But something had shifted. Public opinion turned hard against them. Other former employees started coming forward with their own stories of intimidation and suspicious settlements. The dam broke. In a preliminary hearing 2 weeks later, the judge reviewed Jennifer's server logs and made a ruling. The evidence appeared substantial and credible. The NDAs likely covered criminal activity and were therefore unenforceable. Our case would proceed. DataVault's motion to dismiss was denied. The next 6 months were brutal. The legal discovery process dragged on. DataVault's lawyers fought every document request, every deposition, every motion. My life became an endless cycle of legal meetings, court appearances, and testimony preparation. I worked my shifts at Target, scanning groceries and stocking shelves. Emma adjusted to our new apartment, made friends at her new school. I couldn't afford therapy, but I journaled obsessively, trying to process the trauma. Jessica reached out and apologized for pulling away. She'd been scared, she said, but she was ashamed she hadn't supported me. We slowly rebuilt our friendship. The DataVault legal team tried everything. They filed motions claiming we'd stolen the evidence. They attempted to paint Jennifer as a disgruntled employee with a vendetta. They tried to discredit Carolyn as a vengeful ex-wife. But Patricia was prepared for all of it. And the evidence was overwhelming. 8 months after we filed, the Department of Justice joined our case as an intervener, meaning the federal government was now prosecuting DataVault alongside us. That changed everything. The government had resources we didn't, federal prosecutors with subpoena power and criminal authority. Linda was indicted on 12 counts, including wire fraud, HIPAA violations, and obstruction of justice. Gerald was indicted on conspiracy, fraud, and false claims charges. Both resigned from DataVault immediately. The company tried to distance itself from them, bringing in new management and claiming the violations were the work of rogue executives. But the evidence showed the fraud was systematic and company-wide. Carolyn's divorce finalized. In court, she testified about 35 years of watching Gerald build an empire on corruption. She described conversations where he coached Linda to intimidate employees, where he laughed about regulations being for other people. Her testimony was credible and damning. 18 months after we filed, facing overwhelming evidence and criminal prosecution, DataVault agreed to a settlement. They admitted to violating the False Claims Act. They agreed to pay the government $112 million in restitution and penalties. Under the whistleblower provisions of the False Claims Act, Jennifer, Heather, and I were entitled to 15% of the recovered amount as our reward for bringing the fraud to light. $22 million split 3 ways. After Patricia's contingency fee, each of us received approximately $6 million. The criminal cases proceeded separately. Linda took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges, received 3 years in federal prison, and 5 years probation. Gerald fought longer but eventually pleaded guilty as well. He received 5 years in federal prison, millions in personal fines, and was banned from serving as a corporate officer for life. The FBI formally cleared my record. The fabricated evidence against me was removed from their files. The espionage allegations were officially debunked. My reputation was restored. Media outlets wanted to interview me. Companies offered me jobs. I turned them all down. With my $6 million, I started something new. I founded a nonprofit called the Employee Protection Alliance. We provide free legal support and resources to whistleblowers facing retaliation. Patricia helped me set it up. Jennifer and Heather joined the board of directors. In our first year, we helped 43 people fight back against companies trying to silence them. Some cases we won, some we lost. But every single person had support instead of facing their battle alone. Emma is 10 now. She understands what happened. She knows I fought bad people who were hurting others. She tells me she's proud of me. That matters more than any settlement check. I bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. I garden in the backyard. I take painting classes at the community center. I date occasionally, though I'm in no rush. Slowly, the nightmares faded. The constant fear subsided. I started to feel like myself again. Last week, I spoke at a whistleblower protection conference in Washington, D.C. I stood at a podium in front of 200 people and told my story. I talked about the fear, the pressure, the moment I almost gave up. I described holding Emma after they returned her, feeling like I'd lost everything. I told them the hardest lesson I learned. Doing the right thing doesn't feel triumphant in the moment. It feels terrifying. You don't feel brave when your hands are shaking. You don't feel strong when you're crying in a parking garage, but you do it anyway. Not because you know you'll win, but because you can't live with yourself if you don't try. I explained that corruption thrives on silence, that powerful people count on victims being too scared or too tired or too poor to fight back. Every time someone speaks up, even when they're terrified, it makes it easier for the next person. Change doesn't come from one big hero. It comes from ordinary people who decide they've had enough. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Afterward, 7 people came up to tell me they were facing retaliation at their companies and didn't know what to do. I gave them our nonprofit's information. 3 of them ended up filing cases. 2 won substantial settlements. 3 years after that day when I slid a compliance dongle across the break room counter instead of fetching Linda's coffee, I sat in my backyard watching Emma play with our dog, a rescue golden retriever she named Justice. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I lost my job, my savings, my apartment, my sense of safety. I lost 2 years of my life to legal battles and fear. But I gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I stood up when it mattered, that I protected not just myself and Emma, but thousands of patients whose medical data was being exploited, that I stopped people who thought they were untouchable. My phone rang one afternoon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, still conditioned to be suspicious. But I picked up. Madeline? This is Linda. I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. I froze. I'm calling from the facility, she said. Prison. I know I don't have the right to call you, but I've had a lot of time to think. I want to apologize. I became my father. I hurt people. I hurt you. I terrorized your daughter. I deserve everything that happened. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I sat down heavily on my back steps. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me wanted to scream at her, but mostly, I just felt tired. I forgive you, I said quietly. Not for your sake, for mine. I can't carry the anger anymore. It's too heavy. Thank you, Linda whispered. That's more than I deserve. After we hung up, I realized I meant it. The rage that had fueled me through the darkest days was gone. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Emma ran over, her dog bounding beside her. Mama, can we make cookies? Absolutely, I said. We went into the kitchen together, pulling out flour and sugar and chocolate chips. We made a mess. We laughed. Emma got batter on her nose and I wiped it off. We were just a mom and daughter making cookies on a Saturday afternoon. "Mama, are you happy?" Emma asked while we waited for the cookies to bake. I thought about the nonprofit we'd launched last month that was helping its 60th whistleblower. I thought about Linda and Gerald in prison. I thought about how I slept soundly now, without nightmares. I thought about this house, this kitchen, this ordinary beautiful moment. "Yes, baby," I said. "I'm happy." And I realized it was completely true. Looking back now, I understand that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite the fear. It's standing up when you're already knocked down. It's protecting others even when you can barely protect yourself. I learned that powerful people rely on our silence. They count on us being too afraid to speak, too tired to fight, too worried about our families to risk everything. But every voice that speaks up makes space for the next voice. Every person who refuses to be silenced makes it easier for others to do the same. I learned that justice isn't always swift or certain. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it costs everything you have. But it's worth fighting for. Anyway, most importantly, I learned that doing the right thing doesn't mean you won't be afraid. It means you act despite the fear. You stand despite the pressure. You speak despite the threats. Because some things are more important than safety or money or comfort. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. If you're facing something similar, if you know about wrongdoing, and you're scared to speak up, I want you to know this. You're not alone. There are people who will support you. There are laws that protect whistleblowers. There are organizations like ours that exist specifically to help people in your position. Yes, it will be hard. Yes, there will be consequences. But silence has consequences too. And at the end of your life, you'll have to live with the choices you made. Choose the kind of person you want to be. Choose the example you want to set. Choose courage over comfort. 3 years ago, I was a single mom barely surviving, terrified of losing everything. Today, I'm someone who changed an industry, protected thousands of vulnerable patients, and showed my daughter that standing up for what's right matters more than anything else. Was it worth it? Every single moment of fear? Every sleepless night? Every tear? Every sacrifice? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because Emma knows her mother is someone who fights for what's right. Because 60 families have been helped by our nonprofit. Because Linda and Gerald can't hurt anyone else. Because other compliance officers at other companies saw what happened and felt empowered to report fraud instead of staying silent. One person speaking up can change everything. I never believed that before, but I believe it now. So here's my question for you. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right? What did you choose, and how did it change you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story moved you or made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be facing their own impossible choice. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of a community that believes in accountability, justice, and the power of speaking truth even when it's terrifying. I hope you face your own challenges with courage, that you find your voice when you need it, and that you never underestimate the difference one person can make. Until next time, stay brave, stay strong, and remember that doing the right thing is never the wrong choice.